Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast, elevating your impact through valuable insights and conversations about leadership. Welcome back to another episode of the McCoy Leadership Podcast. Today we have Kevin Johnson with us, which is the founder and chief executive of the Johnson Leadership Group. And I believe if we listen carefully, Kevin today is going to share a secret with us, the secret sauce that not everybody knows about. So Kevin, I'll kick it over to you. And if you want to give a little bit of your background and tell our listeners who you are.
All right, Amos, thank you so much for the invitation to be here. It's an absolute joy. So I'm a native of Richmond, Virginia. Grew up there, parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. Most of the family resides there. I'm a product of the Richmond public school system and then matriculated to Virginia Commonwealth University School of Business right there in Richmond as well. Soon afterward, I relocated to the Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, suburban Maryland area to begin a career with the federal government and ended up staying for 34 years. So I thank Mom for that. She saw a struggling young college graduate not landing any type of meaningful employment. And she said, you really should consider the federal government. So that worked out very, very well. Retired 7 years ago. And my last position was serving as chief of staff at one of the major directorates with the Department of Defense. And I got a chance to oversee human resources, information technology, property, facilities, security, training, very, very important, and a number of other areas that were really illuminating and eye-opening. And I knew at that point that once I moved into the second season of life, I wanted to continue on that journey to develop people, equip people, train, teach people around concepts and strategies and principles that involve leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership, and good leaders do help to make the world a much better place. So I stood up the Johnson Leadership Group about 7 years ago, having a blast, have a chance to work with a number of men and women in the marketplace. And what's so interesting about the journey, Amos, is how much I learned in terms of preparing and getting ready and researching to develop a curriculum that will meet the needs of those aspiring and also seasoned leaders there in the marketplace. I've been married for 31 years. From our union, we have 3 sons. My youngest son is now 26, and when he was 2 years of age, he was diagnosed with autism. So we kind of had to pause and figure out, what are we doing here, and how is this going to work, and how can we help and advocate and negotiate and love and respect this child of ours whose neurological challenges keep him from being able to function at a level where he can compete with those of the same age. So I learned a lot about leadership in the home as a father that I could take out into the marketplace. So that's just a little bit about who I am.
Well, that sounds like a pretty awesome story. And I'm just curious, what gives you the passion to continue day after day teaching leadership to people?
Yeah, great question. I spend 99% of my waking hours looking at men and women to see how can I help pour into them so that they understand the dynamics that leadership is much more than what we know, but leadership has a whole lot to do with how we take care of people, how we treat them, how we advocate for them, how we provide resources and training opportunities for them, how we listen to their ideas and their opinions and their thoughts. That's exhibiting good leadership. And it's not always taught in schools, and it's not always taught in the various training courses that we may take on our job. So that's where the Johnson Leadership Group kind of comes in, because I've seen it over a number of decades. How people are treated is how they respond. They'll go into their shell, or they'll blossom and they'll do great things. And we want to help leaders to understand that the way that you pour into people to help them to tap into their potential has everything to do with you as the leader, believing in them and having faith in them. And so that's what keeps me motivated. That's what keeps me inspired. And these are the same principles I used with my own 3 sons when I raised them. And now they're young men. And I'm just telling them to go out into the marketplace and do the same.
That is fascinating. I know when I was a young manager, not a leader, a young manager, I remember kind of thinking that, you're taught at some point that, okay, we're the business owner, and we give paychecks, and that's really all that anybody needs. They want the paycheck. It doesn't matter what they think or do, just make sure they get production done and so on and so forth. And I remember making that correlation as a young man that, hey, I think it actually matters how I treat people and what I get out of them. But the thing that I really remember being stuck on was we all encounter people that we don't necessarily like when we first encounter them, right? And, for me, I started to realize that many times it wasn't that I didn't like them. They were in a shell because of something that had happened to them. And if you can treat them well and kind of bring them out of that, many times they're some of my best friends maybe today and people that I still work with. So on that note, how many times have you seen that happen where, somebody that's identified as a at-risk youth, somebody that's identified as a bad employee, that many times if you peel back the layers of the onion, it's really something that has happened and we can bring them out of that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So the number of times that I've seen it, experienced it, and jumped right into it is innumerable. I can't remember the number of times that it happened. But it just so happened, Amos, that I was one of those leaders when I was still working with the federal government that would raise his hand to say, send me to the worst organization.
Yep.
Send me to that division where you all are just about ready to give up on. Because we're all born to be relational. Translation, every person on the planet, all 8 billion plus of us on the planet, are born into the earth with a desire to experience authentic, real, meaningful relationships. We're all created to be relational. And what happens is the behavior is a mirror of not being connected to great relationships. That's why people act out. It sounds simple, but it goes to the core of human behavior. And so leaders should show up when it's time to lead a new organization. If you're coming in as a new leader, is not only get an opportunity to understand the operational components of what needs to take place, that's why you're there, but taking the time to get to know the people and allow the people to get to know you, because that's often the missing link. People are told, they're dictated to, they're demanded to deliver, but why can't we change the formula to just ask? And you can ask after we have established some type of a relationship. I'm not talking about getting into people's personal business, but just presenting ourselves as the type of leader that really care that that person has showed up today, and being available to support them and serve them. And it will make a difference. I've seen so many people turn around because they now realize, man, somebody actually cares. He or she actually listens to my ideas and my opinions. And it frustrates people when we don't take the time to acknowledge them and their gifts and their passion and their skills. But when we do, it turns things around. So that's the experience that I've had over a number of years, both personally and professionally, because people are people wherever they are, and that's what they're looking for from their leaders.
So you said something there. We're there to serve those people, and thinking about servanthood leadership, and I don't want to spoil our secret when we get there maybe, but how important is viewing ourselves as servants to serve the people that we're leading? How important is that as a piece of it?
Well, the reason that I believe is very, very important because people don't know what they don't know. And part of the leader's service to those that we are entrusted to lead is we're just providing information or access to information that they didn't know. We're providing access to training that perhaps they didn't know existed. We're making available resources that they can now tap into that perhaps they didn't know what was there. Part of how we serve people is just recommended reading. That's an extension of serving people. If you happen to chair a staff meeting, whether it's once a week or in some cases, depending on your organization, you might have more than one. When people come to these meetings, serving them is an extension of giving them an opportunity to give an update on their project or their initiative that they're working on. And guess what? Getting some feedback on how things are going. All of that is part of you and I as a leader serving people, not leaving them to their own devices, not having them to try to figure things out, but above and beyond providing guidance and direction, but also navigating for them as well. If you see someone on your team going left and you know that's dangerous and they need to go right, then you and I are the navigator to help. That's all part of serving those that we are entrusted to lead. So that's how I look at servant leadership. We're not doormats for people to walk over us. That's not it at all. But we're just providing them with the tools and the nuggets and the tips that they would need that they wouldn't ordinarily know. That's why we were sent there, to lead the people and to lead the organization.
I think that is good, sound advice. I just recently had an experience where basically somebody was inquiring about something at one of the businesses that I'm working with, and the owner told them, no, not going to do that. Period. They walked away. Later, I kind of heard some grumbling and some different pieces, and I went back to the owner and said, have you considered telling them why? And sharing with them maybe where we're at, what's going on today, and maybe they would come up with a different idea, because the problem is still a problem. It's just that you didn't like their solution. And it was pretty amazing that the executive went back to that person, said, hey, just wanted to clarify, here's why I don't want to do that, and gave the parameters. And that person went and thought about it and came back and said, I understand that now. Here's a better solution. And again, back to serving those people. So this is the question I've been excited to kind of ask about, because, I'm all about learning anything that I can possibly learn as well. And leadership strategies often emphasize on planning and execution. But is there something that we're missing out there? That is there a secret that maybe most people don't see around that? What are we missing?
Here's what I believe, Amos, and for everyone listening. I believe that the number one underutilized tool that we have as leaders at our disposal, it's underutilized, is delegation. Because delegation should be done in the spirit of you and I as a leader developing our people. When we delegate initiatives, tasks, actions, projects, key assignments to people on our team, two things are happening. Number one, yes, we're getting work off of our plate, so we can free up our time to do other things. But equally important, if not more important, when we delegate work to people on our team, it should be done in the spirit of us developing them for one day taking on even more responsibility, having more visibility, and having more accountability. It's always a building block and a stepping stone. And I believe across the board, government, corporations, nonprofits, churches, and academic institutions, that's where we are when we're training and we're teaching and we're coaching. I believe that delegation is underutilized because too many of us believe that we have to do it. And remember now, our role as leaders, because we've already demonstrated that we have the ability and the skill to get it done. So at any given time, we can roll up our sleeve and jump in there and get it done. But that's not our role anymore. Our role is to now take care of the people who are there to get it done. And so if we look at delegating work to others on our team in the spirit of developing them and getting them ready for even more responsibility, they're going to walk away feeling really, really good about themselves because their boss is demonstrating confidence in them, faith in them, and belief in them. And it goes a long way. We're sending a subliminal message that I believe that you have what it takes to handle this challenging assignment. And it's in the spirit of developing you and getting you ready for the next areas of responsibility that one day you're going to be responsible for. But at the same time, we're able to get work off of our plate. So now that we can concentrate and focus on some other areas. So I just believe it's a very, very underutilized tool that we have at our disposal. But I also want us to always remember that when we do delegate, we're not just getting work off of our plate, but we're showing that we have confidence and trust in members of our team, and we're using it as a means to develop them as well. So this is just something that I've noticed over the decades. I teach it and I train about it a lot. And I often see eyes go up in the room because people probably don't think about delegating work in that manner. But if they do, it will make a difference in your team. It'll make a difference in your organization. And it'll make a difference in the life of that person that you're leading. So there's benefits and impacts that are positive all the way around.
So that I find very interesting. We should be delegating not only to help ourselves to maybe create time to do some strategic thinking, but we should be delegating and doing it, keeping in mind that we're trying to develop the people that are working with us. So in other words, going on Monday morning to the Monday morning staff meeting and just taking everything that I have on my plate as the leader and saying, I'm going to split this up, and then walking out of the room is not maybe the best way to go about it.
Nah, you don't want to take that approach. Remember now, anytime you delegate work to other people, help them to understand the why behind it. And build them up. Let them know that, hey, I believe in you and I have confidence in you. I'm always here to answer any questions that you might have. Go for it. But no, don't do it in that manner.
I thought I better clarify because I was just picturing somebody saying, but Kevin said that we could delegate everything, right? So
not everything. There's always going to be a few. I use that word delicately. There's always going to be a few that you're going to retain and that you're going to hold on to and be the deliverer of the final product. I mean, that's just a given. You're not going to delegate everything. But say, for example, you mentioned a Monday morning staff meeting. Typically, a Monday morning staff meeting is our response to all of the activity that happened over the weekend. So we're in a response mode, right? As opposed to a staff meeting that may be on a Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock when things may have settled down. Now you have, and you use the word strategic. So now you're thinking strategically in terms of which assignments will be delegated because of time, and because of urgency, and which ones will I hang on to? So there's still, even with an early Monday morning staff meeting, there's still benefits, and there's still going to be a positive impact, but you're not going to, quote unquote, dump everything on the team and then kind of wipe your hands.
So what just popped into my mind, which I've talked about in other podcasts and I utilize in my own life, but you could kind of take the Eisenhower matrix and think about that a little bit differently, but taking everything that you have available and kind of looking at it from what's urgent, what's important to others, and what should we not be doing, and kind of think about how to delegate. I was just thinking in my own mind, you could use that as a tool to help you figure out how to delegate. But going down that same line and sticking with that, so we're now getting better at delegating. How does intentionality play into that? Should we, every time we're delegating, should we be intentional about why we're delegating and how we're trying to develop that person? Should we be developing a plan behind that? But how does being intentional play into that?
Well, I think it should be skill and giftedness oriented. And how do you understand the strength of the skills of people on your team other than getting to know them and developing a good working relationship with them? So it goes back to my earlier comment around the fact that all of us are born with a desire to experience and be a part of some healthy, authentic, wholesome relationships. It doesn't change at work. It's the same thing at work. And it's through those relationships and getting to know each other that you start to see that this person is really gifted here. This teammate is really skilled here. And it kind of helps us to determine which project and which assignment would go to who. Because again, we're looking to develop them as a part of their journey. And so it's really twofold. It's not going to be as successful without knowing your people. And you take the time to know your people through the relationship, but then it will help us in our decision making around which assignments and which initiatives are assigned to who based on their giftedness and based on their skill. And again, it's a cycle. It starts with the relationship. You don't have to get buddy and friendly, but just enough to know your people and they know you. It goes a very, very long way in their development, and overall team performance, and then organizational dynamics as well. How we end up having great camaraderie with our stakeholders, with our customers, with our peers and colleagues, outside organizations who are always looking in. It's just a positive impact all the way around when we take the time to look more closely at how we do that. That's why I call it the one secret. There's no doubt that people know that delegation is important, but what I like to share with leaders is the how and why. How do you do it? And why do you do it? And again, it's in the spirit of developing your people. They walk away so confident, and they walk away feeling so good about themselves that their boss would entrust them with this huge responsibility. I must be doing something right. And it just builds camaraderie, it builds self-esteem, and it builds so much confidence, not only with the individual, but with the team as well.
So can this work at home too? Can I delegate to my children and to, spouse maybe, but I'm just picturing that this same method would work at home as well, because you're helping to develop those around you.
Absolutely. It teaches work ethic. So I taught my sons from the time that they were ankle high how things were going to go in the Johnson household. We're going to have some equitable distribution of chores. Why? Because it builds good work ethic. We're going to have an opportunity to treat each other well. Why? Because respect goes a long way. we're going to be each other's biggest cheerleader. When your brother does something well, when your brother brings home some A's, when your brother gets a special accolade from the teacher and we share it at the family meeting, we're all going to jump up in joy, and we're gonna clap for each other, because that's what it's all. We learn these things at home that we can now take out into the marketplace, and I have an expectation that they're going to be leaders, because we teach that leadership is not based on title or position, but it's just who you are. To treat people in a way that they should be treated. That's value and honor and care and respect everybody within our sphere of influence. That's an extension of leadership. And so, yes, we learned that at home. We have family meetings, right? Because when you get into your workplace, you're going to be expected to attend meetings. And here are some of the expectations. Speak up, share what's on your heart, what's on your mind. Let us know how we can help. That's all part of being in a meeting, to give an update on what's happening in your life, whether it's pleasant or maybe not so pleasant. Don't be ashamed to share with us something that's not going well. It's okay. How can we help you if we don't know? So yeah, this is, again, both personal and professional development when it comes to delegation.
I've often said any good professional development is, it's personal development as well. You can't have one without the other. Kind of thinking a little bit about those folks that maybe are emerging leaders and stuck, or not stuck, wrong word. Folks that are in middle management, they have a small team, but they also have a team above them that are managing them as well. Can they work this in both directions? And kind of what I'm asking, they can obviously work with their team and start developing their team. Maybe above them, maybe they've taken one of your classes but they're not instituting it. Can they work upstream and try to gain skills by offering to take on more, hey, can I help you with that? How does that work? And ultimately, for that emerging leader, I know sometimes it can become frustrating because you're kind of stuck in between until you break out of that. What would be your advice for that emerging leader?
Yeah, the best advice that I can give, Amos, based on your question, and I'm sort of thinking out loud here, is to, all emerging leaders are at different levels as it relates to their desire to move up, their career aspirations, and their goals and their dreams. And so it never hurts for an emerging leader to reach out and touch someone that you would like to mentor you. You may have seen a leader in a certain role. You may have seen how they conduct themselves at a staff meeting. You may have seen them at a town hall meeting, up on the stage behind the podium with a microphone, and how they speak in front of 500 people. You may have seen someone that you might want to mentor you who is just well groomed, and they just carry themselves in a very, very cool, calm, and collected manner. And you just may be inquisitive about, well, how do they do that? Emerging leaders, it's never a foul to reach out to someone in the organization that you see, that you admire, that you might want to mentor you. And it's just a matter of, in a very informal way, you might see them in the hallway, you could ask, or you could make it more formal and find out their administrative assistant or their executive assistant and schedule an appointment. Either way is okay, because you're just asking the question. And because you've asked, there's a 50% chance that they'll say yes. I call it the power of the ask. When you ask folks, generally speaking, there's about a 50% chance they'll say yes. So that's a recommendation that I have for emerging leaders, because you can stay on top of your current assignments and your current projects, while at the same time start to get some visibility with those at a higher level by asking them to sit down with you periodically and just kind of pick their brain and find out how they got to where they are, and have them share their experiences as well. So that's something that I definitely regularly recommend to emerging leaders.
So as we're starting to come to a close, I normally at this point I always say I have a few questions, 2 questions specifically that I ask all of our guests. With your permission, I'd like to add one to that, and I think going forward we're going to have 3 questions that we ask. It just hit me as we're talking that you mentioned in the very beginning, we were talking about kind of we don't learn these things at school, we don't learn these things in different places. And this common theme has come up over and over in the past, 10 or 12 interviews that I've done. And I'm kind of wondering, and maybe there's some value in this. What advice would you give to a school administrator if they were listening? And I know they're probably not. I mean, that's not our audience necessarily, but I'm just curious, what would be the advice you would give to a school administrator of how do we start to change what students are coming out of school with these skills? And I'm not going to call it a soft skill because I don't think they are. But what would be your advice to a school administrator? How do you start to move the needle?
I would just ask a question, and the question would be, would you consider asking the students to help you to develop the curriculum? Get their ideas and get their thoughts. I know they're young. I know they're inexperienced, but I'm always pleasantly surprised at the number of our young people who exhibit wisdom way above their age. I'm amazed at what a 12-year-old can articulate, an 8-year-old can see, a 15-year-old can envision. And I would just ask the school administrator that simple question: would you consider, not have you considered, but would you consider, present tense, having some students to be a part of the curriculum development? And I would leave it at that. Let them think about it, let them marinate on it, and see what happens.
That's a great idea. I have an 11-year-old daughter, and I completely agree with you that it amazes me sometimes some of the pieces of wisdom that she comes back with, as well as some of the things that she sees that I would not suspect she would be able to see. So I would completely concur with that for our young folks that are out there. So the second question is, what is your go-to management book that over your life you've continually went back to?
Oh, wow. The late, great Pastor Miles Monroe, one of the 5 founders of the Bahamas Faith Ministries International there in Nassau, Bahamas, an international teacher. And 1993, I read his paperback book, simply entitled Understanding Your Potential. And it was at a very pivotal time in my life where I read it and I started to understand when you tap into a person's potential, oh boy, it can be unlimited in terms of the things that he or she can accomplish. Understanding Your Potential, Dr. Miles Monroe, a life changer. I still have a copy right here in my home office in my library. I periodically just pull it out. Very simple read. It's about 125 pages, paperback. It helped to change my life.
Awesome. Last question. What is your favorite piece of technology today?
Ooh, good one. That's a thought-provoking one. I have to think on that one. And the reason I have to think on it is because throughout my entire career, information technology was my weakness. And I would always hire a deputy in my organization who demonstrated that they had that skill, because I knew I would need to automate a lot of things to run a successful organization. And that was always my weakness. I would say fast forward today, I would think the I would just say, I would just say my iPhone. My iPhone, I've gotten to be very familiar with it in terms of how it works and all the bells and whistles, and to make sure that I'm always using it in a very positive way. So I would say my iPhone.
Awesome. So if folks want to get engaged with you and find out more about you, where can they find you at?
Well, again, the name of the company is the Johnson Leadership Group. So the website is www.thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com. And the email address is Kevin, my first name, at thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com. We're based in Clarksville, Maryland. And we are always very, very eager to work with organizations and people and teams in terms of leadership development and also executive coaching, because we firmly believe that better leaders help to make the world a much better place. I firmly believe that. And so through our website and through my email, those will be the best way. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm a very active LinkedIn user, Kevin Wayne Johnson. I'm on LinkedIn just about every day, either posting or responding to different posts. It's a very, very great professional networking platform, so you can find me there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming and joining us today, Kevin. I hope maybe in the future we can get you back on and we can unpack some more leadership principles. It has been a pleasure for our listeners. Please don't forget to check us out on LinkedIn and our website at McCoyLeadership.com. And if you haven't, catch up on the past episodes of our podcast. We're on Apple, we're on YouTube, and you can find us on SoundCloud as well. Till next time, thank you so much.